For this particular character's eyelids, I would like each eye to be controlled separately. That way, whenever someone's animating this character, they can have him winking or giving the stink eye or anything like that. So we need two separate custom attributes here. And I'm going to place those in the same place we put the cross-eye attribute, and that's inside this eye controller. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to open up the channel box so we can see when we create these attributes where they go. And then I'm going to go up to Modify and down to Add Attributes. And we'll see this window again. And this time I'm going to add in here an attribute for left blink. And I'm going to tab down into the minimum, and I'll add -5 here. And in maximum, I'll add a 5. And then I'll leave default as 0. And here I'll hit Add. Now you'll see in the channel box we have our attribute for left blink, and this window is still available to us, so we're going to go ahead and add our right blink attribute. And I'm going to tab down and do the same values, so -5 and +5, and leave default at 0. And now I'll hit Add. So now if I close this, we now have our two attributes over here in the channel box, so we can animate a blink with both eyes individually. I used a much smaller range for our blink attributes because blinking is a much smaller range of movement. When I want to make custom attributes and set driven keys for larger ranges of movement, I use larger numbers. That way the animator has a little more control over the detail of the animation, and it also appears a little differently in the graph editor. To help us visualize our animation when we're setting our different keys, we can go into the character model and paint some skin weights on the eyelids. If we try to rotate these joints right now, we actually won't see any movement because we haven't painted those skin weights yet. So I'm going to unrestrict the model in the layer box down here and select our character, and then go up into the rigging tab in animation and double click on our paint skin weights tool. And I'm going to hide the channel box so we have a little more space in here. I'm also going to close the outliner. We don't necessarily need it right now. And in the hierarchy, I'm going to scroll through until we find the eye joints, the eyelid joints and the eyeball joints and that stuff. So here we have the left eyelid upper, left eyelid lower, right eyelid upper, right eyelid lower. And we can see kind of some stray skin weights here that don't belong. We didn't really get into this area of the face whenever we were painting skin weights before, so we can just fix that now. I'm going to use a hard brush, and I'm going to make sure I'm setting value to 0. And I'm just going to paint away these stray weights here. We have a couple areas here on the chin that are being affected on both sides. So I'm just going to go through and remove all those while we're here. So now that that's done, we can actually zoom in. I'm going to start with the left eyelid upper here. And I'm going to make my brush really tiny. I'm going to change my value back to 1. And I'm just going to add some solid weights here, just so we can see how far our eyelids are rotating whenever we rotate those joints. And these will be a little rough. I'm going to go back and fix these later. But for now, this will be fine just for visualizing the movement for right now. I'm going to go down to the lower joint. I'm going to do the same thing. Just add these harsh weights right there. And then I'm going to jump right over and do the exact same thing on the left eyelid upper. So I'm going to paint these in just on the edge of his eye line, essentially. So we're giving him some eyeliner. And then on his lower eyelid, same exact thing. So that'll be good for now. I can already tell you we are going to need to refine this a little bit more, because as it stands, they're going to connect in kind of a funny way in the middle if he ever were to blink this way. So we'll fix that a little later. That works for now. So I'm going to close that window out. I'm going to quit this tool, and I'm just going to grab one of these joints here and go back into the outliner and find whatever joint I grabbed by pressing the F key in here. And then I'm going to select one of our eyelids here. So I'm going to select the left eyelid upper and give that a rotate. So now we're actually getting some eye blinking that we can use as a starting point. So with those weights painted and with our custom attributes set, we can actually start creating these driven keys so we can move these joints around. So I'm going to open up the channel box again up here, and I'm going to select our driver, which is again going to be the container for our attributes, our blink attributes. And I'll go up to the toolbar and select key, and I'm going to look down for set driven key and click on set in that flyer window. Now, just as we did before, we're going to load the driver, which is our eye controller that we have selected, and we're going to select the attribute that we're going to start with. I'm going to start with the left blink attribute. Now in the outliner, I'm going to select the left eyelid upper joint and the left eyelid lower joint and load those in as our driven. Now I'm going to select both of these, and I'm going to choose the rotate X because that's the channel that we want to key. And we'll hit key immediately as soon as that's available because we want to key that default position where it's resting at 0. Now we'll go back to our controller, our driver here, and we'll move the left blink to 5. And at this point, it should be blinking fully. So we need to make that look as if it's blinking and key it that way. So I'm going to go to the outliner and select these joints. I'm going to select the upper eyelid first. I'm going to rotate that down until I believe that's a good blinking position. So I'm going to just say 23 here. And then I'm going to grab the eyelid lower and I'm going to rotate that up until I feel it's a good blinking as well, to where it's kind of closing. And I'm going to select -12 here. That looks pretty good to me. Once we refine these skin weights, it should look a little more subtle. Right now we get a lot of clipping, and there's even a little peaked eye sticking through there. So we'll fix all that with the skin weights. So at this point, we can key this. And just to double check, I'm going to go back to the driver. And just to ensure that's working, I'm going to scrub through it a little bit. And we're getting the effect that we'd expect. He's blinking. So now when he goes to -5, we're going to scrub to -5 here. We want these eyelids to be doing something else. He's going to be making a more wide-eyed expression if he was really excited or he was really surprised or something. So we want to get that effect. So in the outliner, again, I'll select the left eyelid upper, and I'll rotate that up till it looks like he's very surprised. So I'm just going to say around -8 looks good. Then I'm going to select the lower eyelid and rotate that down until I think it looks good. I don't want to go too far down. I think I'll do 8 here as well, and I'll key that. So now if we look, if we grab the driver and scrub through this full range, we can see we can go from surprised to neutral to blinking to kind of squinting or anywhere in between. So I'm going to set this back to 0, and we're going to just move right on to the right blink. So to transition to the right blink, we want to make sure in the set-driven key window we select right blink. And we also want to make sure that we're loading in the proper driven. Instead of using the left eyelid, we're going to be using the right eyelid joints. So I'll load these as driven instead. And those will replace our last selection. So I'll select those. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to go to rotate and make sure that's keyed. So I'll hit key there. And now its default position has been keyed into this position here. And now I'll go back to our driver. I'll select the driver here. And I'll make sure the right blink is scrubbed to 5. And that's going to be our blinked position. So he should be blinking right now. And I'll grab his upper eyelid and I'll bring that down. I'm going to try to use the same values as I used before. So this is going to be 23 here. And then the lower eyelid, I'm going to rotate up. And this is going to be 12, I believe, -12. And I'm going to key it there. So now when we scrub, we get that effect that we're looking for. He should be blinking. So it's always good to test. A lot of times with your selections, you might make mistakes and select things in the wrong order, or a lot of times you'll have the wrong attributes here in the driver selected or the wrong attributes in the driven selected. So it's always good to give it a test just to make sure you're getting the right channels and the right attributes. So now we want to scrub all the way to -5 so we can get the surprised eye look. So I'm going to select the upper eyelid here, the right upper eyelid, and bring it up to, I believe it was -8 on the other side. And then I'll do the same with the lower eyelid. I think this was set to 8 as well. And I will key that there. And now we're done with the set-driven key window for this section. I'm going to close that out. And we can test both of these blink attributes at the same time now. We can see and make sure that everything's working and that full range is being used. So I think that's good. The only thing that we really should do is just clean up those skin weights, because if you see as he blinks, his eye isn't really closing properly and it looks really funny. So we'll go ahead and we'll do that now. To give ourselves a little more room, I'm going to close out this outliner. I'm also going to close the channel box here and select our mesh, then go up into the paint skin weights tool here. And I'm just going to start on the left side. I tend to start on the left side and work on to the right. So in the hierarchy here, I'm going to scroll down and look for the eye joints again and start with the left eyelid upper. And this time I'm just going to use a smooth brush, and I'm going to go in here and just kind of smooth out this harsh, jagged look here. So I want to bring a little bit more of the eyelid down. So I'm just going to smooth across here as those pull down a little bit. And I'm also going to smooth out this edge here and blend it with some of the other vertices on this side, just so we get a better seal here as he closes his eye. And I'll do that on the other side as well. And kind of bring up this jagged part here just by smoothing. Now I'm going to go back into the hierarchy and select the lower eyelid and do a similar thing here. Just smooth out some of the extra parts here in the eyelid to bring that up, and then smooth out these edges here so we get a good seal as he closes his eye. And it also looks like some of the weights transferred because we used the smooth tool. So I'm just going to remove these by inverting my brush by holding Control down. And that should bring down those other vertexes so we get a better seal here. And I'm going to just go back up to the upper eyelid again and give this another once over just so we get these connecting here. Once that's looking good, we're going to zoom out here and quit that tool and grab this driver controller and give these attributes a little bit of movement just so we can see how our work paid off here. It looks a lot smoother than it did before. There's always room for improvement and refinement when it comes to painting skid weights, but for now I think that looks pretty good. So I'm going to set these back to their default position, and instead of doing all that work on the other eye, I'm simply going to select the faces of this mesh, go over into the rigging tool set by selecting this drop down, going to rigging, and find skin and mirror skin weights. And that should mirror over the work that we did on this eye to the other side. So we can test that by grabbing our controller, selecting our attributes here, and give him a little scrub with the middle mouse button. And he's looking like he just woke up. But that's the effect we're looking for, so we're ready to move on to the hands next.